Today's show is going to be great. We're making Freeform pendant. Let's make some jewelry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm the WrapMaker, Jim McIntosh, and today's show is going to be a fun one. We're making a Freeform wire wrap pendant, and this pendant actually comes from my new book. Ta-da! Take a look at this. My brand new book, Wire Wrapping, Simple Techniques for Beautiful Designs. And this book is I take all 20 years of my experience, and I've put all my tips and tricks and all of the simplifications for you to be able to make your own wire wrap jewelry. It's got over 300 full color images that highlight every step of the way for you to make 10 different projects in it. So if you don't have a copy of this yet, make sure you pick one up. There should be some information below in the description, as well as could be some information on the products that we're offering on our website. So pick you up a copy of this. But what we're doing is actually going to be making, this is a Freeform pendant right here on the cover. I used the same technique that we're going to use today on this. All right? So why don't we get started and let's make a Freeform pendant. Before we start making, let me show you what we're going to make. Let me go over to the sample wall here. And let me just grab a Freeform pendant. And let me show you what we're making. This pendant is a Freeform pendant. You'll notice it's a border wrapped pendant. But notice how these lines swirl across the front. The technique we're going to be using allows us to move these wires around in such a way that we connect them back in and continue the wrap. So this is great, and this is a really great project for large stones. It's great for blank stones. So if you've got just a complete one-colored stone, this is perfect for that because you can use it kind of as a blank canvas to move across the front of it. Sometimes you'll have cabochons that have some nice swirls in it, some areas that kind of curve. You can mimic that curve with these front wires. So this is a great, great project for that. Let's go ahead and let's start the project. Let's take a look at all the tools we're going to need for this. Now, our wire is going to come on a coil or a spool. To get that wire off, you're going to need a pair of flush cutters, a really good pair of flush cutters. And these are great because they're really thin, so you can get into some of these small areas on your piece if you need to trim some of that away. So flush cutters. We're going to be using a lot of painter's tape. This is great because it holds everything, all of our wires in place. So we're going to be using this. Now, I'm really weird about my painter's tape, so I have a pair of scissors that I use because I like to just cut it off. I'm weird, I'm sorry, but that's what I do. We'll need a fine tip permanent marker. This is a nice fine tip. This will mark the wire that we're going to be using, but those marks won't be permanent. We can use some non-acetone fingernail polish remover to remove any marks that you may be seeing that are maybe outside of the wire bundle. And now we're going to also need these. Now these are Ratmaker Pliers. These are a great, great tool because it simplifies wire wrapping. These, and as you'll see as we're making it, these will be used to make all of the wraps. They're very easy to use. Make sure you pick you up a pair of these if you don't already have one. I have 2 different sets on my website, thewrapmaker.com, 2 different pair. The only difference is the handles on them. I'm using the cushion comfort handles because I like they're longer handles and my hands are a little fatter and wider, so I like to use these just to be able to have the control. We also might need a pair of chain nose pliers, depending on what kind of things we'll be doing to kind of move it around, the wire around. We might need to be able to get into some tight spots. And we will also need a measuring device. So here I'm using a nice long 16-inch ruler. This is way too much ruler than I need, but this is the one I really like to use. So those are all the tools we'll need. Let's look at the materials. The materials for this project, very simple. They're very easy to find. I've only got 3 things, so it's not a whole lot of things you'll have to get. The first thing and the important thing is 21 gauge, dead soft, square wire. Why square wire? Well, when making a piece, we want everything to kind of sit flush next to each other. And if we've got two round things next to each other, they tend to roll. They'll curl a little bit. It makes it harder to wire wrap. So I always recommend wire wrapping with square wire. And this is dead soft wire because it's easier on your fingertips. It's easier to maneuver. And it's very forgiving as well. If you make a mistake, you can usually get that bend out of it without any problem. The other type of wire we'll need is 21 gauge, dead soft, half round wire. And this is exactly what it says. It's half round. And it's got a flat side and it's got a domed side. The flat side is the side we want to put up against the wire frame. The half round side is the side that we want everybody to be able to see. It gives it a nice, clean, polished look. And again, why am I using half round wire? Well, with square wire, we want something flat against something flat, something squared up. So it's going to give you a stronger wrap. It's going to hold everything into place so that as we manipulate the wires, nothing will move out of place. And this is also makes it so much easier to wrap with. The last thing we'll need is a cabochon. Now, I'm using a small 25 by 18 millimeter cabochon. In the book, this is what it tells you to do. I really do like to do this particular thing with some larger stones. But today, since this is the easiest type to find, we're going to use 25 by 18. And that's it. That's all the materials we'll need for this. To begin the project, we need to figure out how much wire we're going to need for this. Now, this, what we're going to be doing here, I do it for every single piece that I make. And it's very simple to do. It's simple math, but this will help you to save some of your wire. I hate wasting wire. So we're going to use a piece of painter's tape. We're going to pull about 5 or 6 inches of painter's tape off. Now, I'm using the wide stuff. You don't need to necessarily use that. It works either way. And I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm going to cut maybe about 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch strip lengthwise down the tape. Now, we're going to hold on to this. I usually kind of set it aside and stick it to my work table so that I can grab it and use it in other parts. So we've got this thin strip. What we're going to do is we're going to start at the top of the stone. So you need to determine which is the top and which is the bottom. So here's my top, and I'm going to, the very top, I'm going to stick my tape to it, and I'm just going to bring it around the outside of the cabochon. And when the two ends meet, I'm just going to trim off my excess. Didn't trim enough. Let's finish that. Let's see if I can, there we go. Doesn't make much of a difference, but so this is what I've got. I've got tape all the way around it. And now I'm going to mark out where I'm going to be making my wraps. The first one we're going to mark out, I'm using a fine tip permanent marker. So here's the top of my cabochon. We're going to go opposite that. So it'd be the bottom center of the cabochon. I'm just going to make a line. Now this is going to center us. And then to the left and to the right, I'm going to make another mark about 1/4 of an inch on either side of that center mark. Okay, this is art. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. These are just kind of markers for us to be able to figure out where we're going to be laying things out, how big we want it, and everything. Everything will center in the end. Now let's go to the other side where the tape ends meet, and we're going to kind of think of that tape end area as the middle. So we're going to go to the right about 1/4 of an inch, and we'll go to the left about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I should have a mark at the top on either side, and the center is where the tape ends meet. That's the center. So now we can remove our tape, and we're going to put it on our work surface in front of us. Stick it down right there, and we want to measure this. This is where it gets kind of, the math kind of comes in. So we are here at about 2 3/4 inches. I'm going to say this is going to be 3 inches. This will make it much, much easier to do. We're going to do a little bit of math. So to be able to get enough wire to go around the piece, that's what we have here. That's 3 inches. But to be able to do some work on the front of it, to make the designs that we want, we're going to need a little bit of extra wire. So I always double this length. So we've got a length of 3 inches. If we double that, that's 6 inches. We're also going to need 1 more inch for our bail. 1 more inch. So we're going to cut our wire at 7 inches each. And let's do that right now. So we're going to grab our square wire, and we're going to cut 4 pieces of this square wire at 7 inches each. There's 1. 2. All right, here's our last one. This is number 4. Now, people ask, why am I cutting 4 strands of wire? That's a good question. I'm cutting 4 strands because we're going to need wire for the front and for the back. So that's 2 wires. And we're also going to need some wires that are going to hold the sides of the stone in. So that's where our other 2 wires are. You could add another wire to that, a 5th wire, to give you, if the stone is a little bit bigger, a little taller. But 4 for this size stone that we're using is perfect. So we want to go ahead now and we want to straighten our wires. Now this is dead soft wire, so look, I can just straighten this with my fingertips and it comes right through. Some people like to use like a cloth. Some people also use some nylon jaw pliers. Couldn't think of the word. Nylon jaw pliers. To do that. That saves your fingertips a little bit. But I'm so used to doing it with my fingertips. After years of doing this, I've got get more control of my fingers. And it doesn't really hurt my fingers. So I'm going to straighten them all out. And we want them relatively straight. They don't have to be perfectly straight. Just relatively straight. All right. So now I've got 4 wires that are straight. The next thing we want to do is remember that piece of tape that we had. We want to cut what I call flags out. So we're going to cut across. We're going to make these little pieces of tape about this big. We want 4 of them. And I always stick them to my work surface so I can grab them as I'm going. So start cutting 4 of these little flags with your tape. We're going to do 1 more. So this is 4 of these little, I call them flags. All right, I'll keep that rest of that tape and set it aside as well. Now, the work surface, okay, so we're going to work with this one. So I want you to line up one end of your wires so that they're flat and sitting next to one another. You don't want any of them kind of sitting on its corner, but you want them all straight and flat. And I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape. I'm going to put it across all 4 wires, just like this. And I'm going to take this long end here, and I'm going to bring it around to the other end. And that's why I call it a flag. See, it just looks like a little flag on a flagpole. And all I've done is I'm holding the wire in. That's going to help keep everything nice and straight. From this piece of tape, we're going to work our way to the other side. We want to keep all of our wires straight. Make sure none of them cross over. And I'm going to grab another piece of painter's tape. And I'm going to make another flag. So I've got 2 flags. I want you to notice something. You might notice that this center of the wire, it's kind of open. And that tends to happen at times, and it will drive you crazy. So what I do is I do this. I'm going to run my fingers up and down it, and I'm going to pull that all out. I'm going to get them all to join up with one another. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to curve it one way, and then I'm going to curve it back the other way. I'm going to do this about 5, 6 times. I'm going to keep going back and forth, and what I want to do is I'm trying to get all of these wires to kind of come in together. It might take some time. Why is this wire right here? This wire is not cooperating today. We'll fix you. All right. So mine didn't come together. These other three did. For some reason, this fourth one is not cooperating. That's fine. So we now need to mark the center of our wire. So remember we said we had a 7-inch wire bundle. So I'm going to set my ruler down, and I want to mark the center of this. This half of 7 is 3.5. So I'm going to take my fine tip permanent marker, and I'm going to make a mark across the wires at 3.5 inches. So we've got a mark. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up that center mark on my wire with the center mark that we made on the tape. And I'm going to transfer all of the lines that I have on the tape to the wire. So I'm going to make a mark here, here. And I'm going to make a mark here. And then I'm going to also mark where the tape end is for both sides. That's about the end of that piece of tape. And let's go over here, and we're going to put that mark and then the end of the tape. So you should have 3 sections on here that are marked. And these are kind of the area we're going to put our wraps. These are kind of targets for us. Now, remember I said that we're going to fix this guy because he's all messed up. What we're going to do is we'll bring them all together. I'm going to put a piece of tape just outside of that wrap area. I'm going to make another flag. Put it in the wrong place. We're going to start over on that one. Let's see, I got a piece of tape right here. See, I like to keep my mistakes in so you guys see that I'm not perfect at this. I do make a lot of mistakes as I'm going. So I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape. I'm going to bring all of them together just like that. So just outside of the center wrap. We're going to do that one more time. We're going to make another flag here. And we're going to do it on the other side of this center wrap. And that's going to bring all of those wires in together. So just outside there. See, so now all the wires are now nice and together. And that's going to make things a lot easier as we're working with this. So now the next thing is to actually do the wire wrapping. So what I've done is I've cut a piece of half-round wrap wire, and I've cut it off the spool, and I want you to notice that I kept it in the curl, this little curled shape, and that's important because when the wire comes off the spool or off a coil in this shape like this, the inside is usually the flat side, and the outside of this curve is the domed side. And that's important to know because the flat side is going to go against the wire bundle. The outside is what everybody's going to see. So that's the thing that we want to make sure is out. Okay? We're also going to be wrapping using our Ratmaker pliers. Very easy to use. These things are great not only if you're brand new at wire wrapping, because these Ratmakers make it much easier to wrap if you're new. But if you're an experienced wire wrapper, these things make things faster. It goes a lot faster with these Ratmaker pliers. Pick you up a pair of these. They're great. So we're going to take the long jaws of this. We're going to put it just outside of where we want to begin our wrap. When we do that, it opens up a little gap in between the pliers. And that little gap is what's going to allow us to put the wrap wire in. So I've got the wrap wire going over the top of the frame of the wire bundle, and I'm going to line it up where I want to start, and I want to put it into the short side of this until it bottoms out, till it won't go any further. Then I'm going to add just a touch of pressure to the handles, not a lot. No, doesn't need to be a gorilla grip. But I'm going to grab the long end, and I'm just going to start my wrap. And I'm going to make about 4 or 5 wraps. And then I'm going to make sure that it's where I want it. So this is where I started, and that's where I want it. So once I get it there, I'm going to set it. And setting it is just a matter of squeezing it flat against the wire bundle. And then I'm going to keep going. And I like to kind of hold on to this with the WrapMakers to give me just a little bit of extra leverage as I'm going. So I'll make a couple more wraps. I'll set it again. And then I will finish it up. I'm going to go all the way to that other mark here. And that should do it. Just make sure it's... Now, I began and I'm ending my wrap so that they're both on the same side. And that's the side that I marked. So that's the inside. That's going to be the side nobody sees. So we're going to set this. And now, before I cut it, I'm going to make my little curl here. And that is a good thing to always do as you're wrapping. Before you cut anything off, if you got a piece of wrap wire left over that might be usable later, make that little curl in it and then cut it. So we're going to trim this. My wire cutter. I'm going to trim it about half the width of the wire bundle. Set this aside, and I'll just push this up against everything else, and I'll do the other side. So I've cut both sides. Now I'm setting that everything's in place. So that's our first wrap. Now that we've got this wrap done, we can remove these. Because now, remember, we had that problem with all that gapping and everything that was driving me crazy. Well, now that I've got this center wrapped, I don't have to worry about that any longer. See, that gap is completely out. We're not bowing any place. Everything's nice and uniform. The next thing we want to do is we need to form the wire bundle around the cabochon. Now I'm going to show you kind of an interesting little trick that my wife came up with. We were in a class and we were using some slippery stones, and a lot of people were having problems getting this down. My wife came up with this brilliant idea of taking a piece of painter's tape and putting the cabochon down in front of you, and then tape it to your work surface. So just put a piece of tape over it, and then just tape it down, just so it doesn't move around on you. Simple as that. Now, my stone is a carnelian. It's a solid stone, so the top and the bottom is going to be pretty much uniform. If you're using a stone that may have particular side of it that you say this is going to be the bottom, this is going to be the top, and they're not uniform, the top and the bottom. Let's say it's a teardrop shape. You're going to want to make sure whatever the bottom of the stone is pointing away from you, because what we're going to do is we're going to take that center wrap and we're going to center it at the bottom of the stone, and then just kind of grab each side and bring it around the outside of the stone. You want to kind of get it centered. Now, if it's not centered, you can take your WrapMakers and I just kind of hold it, this side of it, and I just kind of move it to where it needs to be to make this centered on my little horseshoe shape. So if I put it down here, see, that is centered on my stone. So now I can just release my stone from its cage here, from its taped servitude. And now we don't need these, because what we want to do is we're going to start making our design. This is the freeform part of this. This freeform, it allows us to make a design and a shape that's different. In a standard way of doing this, you really are kind of limited with what you can do as far as bending the wires over the stone. This allows you to kind of make a nice freeform flowing design on the front of your stone. Now, since this is such a small stone, this is a 25 by 18 millimeter cabochon that we're using, it doesn't give us a lot of canvas area to work with. So I'm probably going to only use one wire. I'm going to use this front wire here. This would be on my right. And I'm just going to kind of pull it away a little bit. And I'm going to start my design. And I've got my cabochon sideways just so it's easier to move the wire where I want it. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you are making sure that the wire is able to cover all of the stones. So the bottom needs support, the top needs support. So as you're making this design, think about how this design is going to securely hold the front end. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. So I've got this one wire I've separated, and notice I brought it over to here because I want to make sure that this bottom section of the stone is secured in the setting. So once I get it how I want it, I'm going to now swing it back. So I'm just going to use my fingertip. You can use anything you want to make these curves. I'm going to just make a curve this way. I want to kind of come down a little bit. I'm going to kind of make some odd shapes. You're not limited to anything out here. This is your artwork. You make whatever you feel. The important thing is that it's secure to the front of this. And then I'm going to kind of come back here just a little bit. Let's see. The good thing is we're using dead soft wire, and that's good because that allows us to make mistakes and pull those mistakes out. What I did was I kind of pulled everything too much as I went back. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to bring this up the center like this. And I want to join this back up with the side that it started on. So I'm going to bring it back up here and kind of re-bring it in with these four right here. Actually, what I want to do before I finalize that, I want to decide if I want to use a wire from the other side for anything. If I want to use one of these wires, and you know what? I think I'm just going to make just a little locking thing, just to add one more. So what I'm going to do is, that's a good thing about this. Like I said, this is artwork. So I'm going to just make a loop right there, kind of a big loop. And then I will join this up with everything again. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to refine a lot of this as I go. I'm going to move some of this stuff around to get it into its final place and make sure everything is where I want it. Okay, but for now, that's where I'm going to go. So I want to rejoin these two front wires back in with the bundle on each side. So again, we're going to take another piece of painter's tape. I'm just going to tape it back up there. And I notice these are kind of short. We're not going to be able to do much with them. I'll show you what we're going to do with them as we make our bail, as we get towards the end of that. We're going to do just a few things to get rid of those as we make our bail. So this is what I have. It looks kind of like a mess right now, but like I said, I'm going to refine some of this as we go, just to make sure it's how I want it. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to do the top wraps up here. Whenever I make my pieces, I like to make sure that I've got 3 points, 3 wrap areas that are like 3 points pushing in almost on the stone. That holds it into place. I want to make sure I've got a nice secure setting around the stone, and having 3 points around there at least allows that inward push to kind of hold everything in. So that's my thinking. There's a madness to my method, so trust me, it all works. So what we want to do now is we want to make these top wraps. So I've cut another piece of wrap wire. This is about a 6 or an 8 inch piece of wrap wire. Now this is a little tricky because we're going to have to wrap and bring it in through this center. And I use my index finger. So as I'm wrapping, I push it up through and I continue to do this. Let me show you how. So I'm going to position my wrap makers where I want to start my wrap. So I want to start right about here. And I'm going to grab my wrap wire. I'm going to set it up just like I've been doing. I'm going to put it in here. Add my pressure, and I'm just going to make, it's about 7 wraps. So look what I'm doing. I pushed my finger up through the center. So I'm wrapping, pushing my finger up through the center. As I was showing you that, everything went off on me there. 3. Here's number 4. 5. 6. One more. 7 wraps. And we're going to finish on the inside. Now, why did I count my wraps? Good question. You have to count your wraps for the top, because if I make 7 on one side, I want to make sure I do 7 on the other side. So I count my wraps as I go. So let's position everything. So now there's still plenty of wrap wire here. So I'm going to put just a little curl in there, and I'm going to trim my wrap wires. I'm going to trim it about half the width. I'll set this aside for a second. Now, we do not set these top ones. We want to make sure that these top wraps can move. To make everything centered, those wrap wires need to move around just a little bit so that as we're putting it around the stone and securing it in place, we can move those just a little bit to be able to center it around the stone so everything is symmetrical. You don't want to set these in place. It'll drive you crazy trying to get everything to move again. The other thing is we're going to be moving the back wires to cover the back of the piece so that it holds the back in. And if you have this locked into place, those wires, as you're pulling it and bending it over the back of the stone, it's not going to move into place. It's going to be really hard to get through that wrap. Okay, so we've got this side done, and now let's do the other side. Again, we're going to be going up through the center. Hold on, I got to kind of get it maneuvered how I want it. That's not how I want it. This is how I want it. So we're going to take that piece of wrap wire that we had, this small little guy here. It should be enough. We're going to use this. We're going to set it in there. We're going to wrap 7 times right here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just a little bit. I'm running out of tape space here. 6. Here's number 7. And again, we'll trim this. Oh, I didn't do 7. I did 6. There. That should be 7. And we're going to trim it on the inside of the piece again. We're not going to set these. There. So we've got both sides now secure. Let's push these down. Now, I don't set these, the ends. I just push them so that they're even with the rest of the wrap, so that nothing moves out of place on us. There it is. All right. So now we can remove our flags that are holding the top of the piece in. Now, before we move on, we want to make sure that we've got these top wraps kind of put into the right place. So what I like to do is I like to put it in the setting, and I like these wraps to be just at the top tip of the stone before I bend the backs into place. See, so I've got these guys are right here. They're kind of even with the top of the stone right there. So now we need to do something with the back. So we've got to be able to get a hold of these back wires. So I always kind of grab them and pull them away a little bit on each side. So yeah, this one, let me grab it and pull it away. There. This is just so I can get my WrapMakers on it. I'm going to grab that back wire right here just outside of the bottom wrap. I'm going to grab that, and I'm just going to turn it, going to bend it, twist it a little bit towards the center. So I'm just going to make just a slight move to the middle. I'm going to do this on both sides of that bottom wrap. See, so we've got, so the bottom of it just kind of goes in like this. Now we can put our stone in, and we'll do this. We'll secure the back. See, these are slippery stones, aren't they? So we're gonna, come on now, you're gonna cooperate. Here we go. So we're gonna put our stone in there. We got to work him in. There we go. We want him to all the way down. And now we're gonna do the same thing with the top wraps. We're going to take and hold the wrap wire just below the top wrap. We're just going to turn it to the middle on both sides. This will secure the whole thing top to bottom. Okay. Just like that. See, so this will secure the back of the piece in. Now you want to make sure you got it all worked in. And this is also another good time to kind of look at your piece and make sure you have everything how you want it. You can do a little bit of what I call housekeeping. You can also move these wires. If you grab this top wire and you kind of pull just a little bit out, it will kind of pull it back into an area that you want it, make it a little shorter. I think that's kind of what I want right there. Okay, very good. So the next thing we need to do is we need to center everything and set these top wraps before we can make our bail. So bring the two of them, and you're going to cross the two sides over one another. And what you want to do is you want to get the top wraps so that the tips touch just above the stone. You may need to, since we didn't set these, we can move them around a little bit just to get them so that the tops are above the stone, just about like that. See, so notice where my wraps are. So if I hold it out here, see, so everything is centered to the bottom wrap. So once I get that, I can go ahead and I can set these top wraps just by giving them a squeeze. Squeezing this side. Okay, and that brought everything back into place. Now we can't leave these crossed over like this. We have to uncross them. So take your WrapMakers and put them just above the wrap, on the top wraps, and just kind of bend them outward. Just like that. So they look like bunny ears. And then grab the bunny by the ears and bring it back together. So you have both sides are parallel with one another. So I have 4 on this side, 4 on this side. I'm going to line them up about near each other like this, so that they're nice and even. And I'll grab another piece of tape, and we're going to tape this top section, because what we need to do now is we need to make a bail. And the bail wrap is going to go right in here. Okay, so make sure everything is, once you get it taped up, you can kind of, I like to kind of wiggle it back and forth like this, just to get everything put into place and centered on here. And again, I can take a look at what we've got. Now that things are getting more and more secured, we can make sure that we've got everything kind of where we want it. This top body, this leap, does not want to cooperate. We'll fix that. There. So the next thing we need is about a 10-inch piece of wrap wire. Now, remember we said we want to hold the frame with our WrapMakers, and when we do that, that opens up a gap in between. Well, notice if we hold both of these, it's a big gap, and it's not going to work. So what I do is I grab the top wrap right there, and that makes a smaller gap so that it'll hold our wrap wire. So put your wrap wire in, and what we're going to do is we're going to do what I call a double bail wrap. We're going to wrap from the top wraps up towards the ends of the wires about 7 times. We're going to make the bail, and then we're going to go from the top of the wire ends back down towards the top wraps, adding in those bail wires. I know, it sounds confusing. Trust me. Trust me, it works. Let's do it. Here we go. So I've got my wrap wire set. So I'm just going to make my 7 wraps. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 more, 7. Now I want you to notice when I did this, when I wrapped this, I wrapped the front of the piece is facing up. So my wrap wire begins here on the back. See, it's coming out the back of the piece. And I finished that wrap so that both of them are on the same side. So once I get that, I can set it into place. Kind of move it down. You want to move it all the way down as close to those top wraps as you can get it. And then set it in place really well. Just like that. And now you can take this last piece of tape off. We want to separate these two sides again. So you want to get the 4 on one side and the 4 on the other. And just make sure you've got them all the right wires. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5. Whereas one of these wires does not belong here. Let's see which one you guys do not belong. Back one. Oh, I was right the first time. All of these. If you look down the top, you can see what's in the wrong place. There we go. And you can separate them because they'll cross over each other and they'll look kind of strange. So bring them down horizontally so that's easier to work with. Now, remember we said these front wires were too short to work with. So we're not going to make a bail out of those. We're going to use the second wire from the front on each side. So there's one on the left, one on the right. I bring them back to the center. Just like so. We're going to bend these, make the bail. We're going to bend them between our wrap wire ends so that we can incorporate them. Now I'm going to use a pen for this. Now, normally I would use my fingertips. You can use just about anything. You can use 6-step pliers. You can use wrap and tab pliers. But I want to show you how to do it with just a pen. And I've got my fine tip permanent marker here. And I'm just going to push them over, those wrap wires over to the back. And like I said, in between my 2 wrap wires. That just gives us a shape. We're just using this to give us a shape. Is all we're doing. Now, where my long wrap wire that we were just working with meets, where it intersects with our bail, everything from the wrap wire up to the top of the bail, we want to stay curved like this. Everything from the wrap wire below, we want flat against this, against our top wraps, our bail wraps. So I line up my WrapMakers just above that intersecting point, and I kind of close that loop to bring everything back. So everything from here up is curved, everything from here down is flat. Once you get that, you can take your wrap wire. Now we're going to wrap from here, from the top, toward the little tail. So we're going to continue our wrap. So wrap until the 2 wrap ends, or the 2 wrap wires, meet. Just take your time. There. So now they are right next to each other. Right next to each other. To secure this, this is something that I really don't know of anybody else doing. And I came up with this 20 years ago when I was trying to figure out how to make bails and nobody was telling me how to make a secure bail. I said, forget it. I'm just going to figure it out myself. This is what I came up with. And I'm telling you, this is the strongest bail that you can find in wire wrap. It's strong. It's secure. It's not going to come loose. Watch this. Take the 2 wrap wire ends. I'm going to cross them over and I'm going to twist them together like you do a bread tie. Something that us men have to figure out how to do because we never, ever, ever put the bread tie back on the bread. Do we, gentlemen? So we make our twists, and we want this to be about as close to our bail wrap as we can get. Once you get the twist done, you can set this outside wrap. It is secure. This bail is halfway secure. We want to take that twist that we made, we want to push it up towards the top of the piece, And I want you to cut maybe about 3 or 4 wraps in. Just a little pigtail here. Little pigtail. If it's too long, just give it a trim. This one looks like it should be pretty good. Okay. That's going to get it out of our way. But we want to secure it tightly. So we have these 2 bail wires that were made the bottom of the bail. I want to actually, this one I've got to kind of fix my bail. We want to make sure both those bail wires are even. And there's mine. Here we go. We'll use these, and we will just even them up a little bit there. So we want to take these 2 and we want to push them up and over that pigtail to cover that pigtail so it doesn't scratch anyone. And then we want to trim it so it's about 1 millimeter or 2 above the pigtail. Now, remember, you can always trim off more wire. You cannot add more wire once it's cut. Okay? So if you just take it a little bit at a time, trim a little bit, check it, trim a little bit, check it, till you get the right length that you want. I'm just above that pigtail, and I'm going to take my WrapMakers and I want to push them. I'll push those 2, kind of curl them over my pigtail, and then push them into the bail. This covers it right here. It covers the pigtail so it's not going to scratch anyone. It also makes an extremely strong bail. With that hook there, see, this is not going to come apart. Okay? That's what we want. We want a very strong bail so this thing lasts for a long, long, long time, and your customer or whoever you give this to is going to be happy and satisfied with it for years and years and years. All right. Now we've got these top wires. I said that these little guys right here were too short to do anything with, and in my opinion they are. You can keep them, you can work with them as you want, but I'm going to show you how to remove these wires. So I hold this at a 45-degree angle. Now, because this one's so short, I'm going to have to grab it with my WrapMakers and do this. But all I do is I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until it pops off. And what's happened, if you look down in there, it's got a little hook to it that's holding on to this outside wrap. And that's what you want to do. So I'm going to do the other one now. I'm going to grab that other tiny little front one. This one's a little bit longer so I can work with it. See how simple, how easy this will come right off. See, it pops right off. Now, these wires that are left over. You can do anything you want to those wires. That thing I just showed you to be able to twist and twist and or wiggle, wiggle, wiggle until it pops off. You can take all of them off and it's still going to hold the piece together. It's still going to be strong. Personally, I like to add some sort of decoration. And again, this is your artwork. You do whatever decoration you want with these top wires here. It's up to you. Play around with them. See what you like, see what you don't like. Have some fun with it, okay? I'm going to just take it. I like to make some curly things on it. Just something nice, curly and flowing across the front. So I'm just going to do just a basic, just to show you. I'm just twisting it or bending it with my fingertips. And then I'll cut off my excess. I always make sure that when I cut my excess wire off, that I make sure that the ends are hidden inside curls or in some way that it does not hurt anyone. And then we'll do the same thing here. I'm going to bring it this way. Do something similar. And we will go and make a curl here at the top. And trim off our excess. This kind of come apart there. There we go. Trim off some of our excess wire. And if you do something that you don't like, you just always either cut it back to where you like it or get rid of it. You can do whatever you want. And I'm probably going to put, there we go. See, I wanted to move that piece just a little bit. Now I want to move this one down just a hair. And this is what we ended up with. just a nice, flowing, gentle, freeform pendant. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed making this. This is a very, very versatile design. You can use this in so many different ways to make some beautiful, beautiful jewelry. Now, I want you to remember, if you need any of the tools, any of the materials that are around here, check out the description below. Gives you some place that you can find the tools and materials. And also make sure you get my book. Get my book. There's some great designs in here that are simple, just as simple as what we just went over on this one. All right. Again, I'm the Ratmaker, Jim McIntosh. And people always ask me, how do you make such beautiful jewelry? I'll tell them the same thing I tell them all the time. Practice, practice, practice.